Welcome to another episode of the full air ride Slambretta build. Let's see what we can get done this week. I'm really close now with the build to the point where I want to pull everything off and weld all that framework that I built up fully, because everything is just tack welded together. Things like the mudguard, front mudguard, I can't really finish off until I get the forks and links back from Steve. I do want to do some kind of rear mudguard inside there, but again, the engine is kind of in the way of doing that. But before I tear this all apart and fully weld everything, there's just one thing left that would stop this scooter actually running, and that is the exhaust system. I don't want to go and fully weld everything up and then realise that I should have just tweaked something just to be able to fit an exhaust system in there. So I think we're going to start off by looking at the exhaust. When I bought the engine for this scoot, it did come with like an expansion pipe there, which is just way too big. I've shown on previous episodes that the pipe coming out of the barrel is just scraping on the ground already. It's quite a thick, big pipe, so that's going to be no good to me. I don't even want to start trying to fit that thing. I did think about possibly a standard exhaust, but again, the box on those is pretty chunky and I can just tell there's no way that box is going to fit under there. So I started doing a bit of research and I did find those, I can't remember the name of them now, but they're like twin exhausts that come off, and they've got quite a narrow small silencer box with long tail pipes. Look pretty cool actually, and I would have liked to probably have got one of those, but they're pretty expensive, so I didn't want to blow the budget on that. So I did put a post on the Bristol Slambretta Club WhatsApp page to see if anyone had anything similar or suitable, and I had a reply. A chap called Ian contacted me and he was selling this. Again, I have no idea what this is called, but the thing I like about it is this box part is reasonably compact. I like the shape of it being round actually. I think there's space under there. We'll get into that in a minute, but I think hopefully that's going to fit. What I might end up having to do is cutting this tailpipe and rerouting that. And this pipe, which comes from the barrel, is much smaller size. I know a lot of people out there are going to shout about the performance side of things, but the Slambretta build has never been about performance. It's not going to be a race scooter, so I'm not too worried about that. I just want to get the thing being able to move down the road. I'm hoping this is going to work, so yeah, let's get into it. So just thrown this exhaust in here, and initial thoughts are quite promising. So it fits in this space. You can see my point now about, I think a standard box just wouldn't fit in here between this framework and the engine. Also you can see, hopefully through there, that's that big expansion pipe that came with the engine, scraping on the ground. I mean, this is close to where it needs to fit up, although the actual exhaust is now touching the ground. I think this pipe is going to work out much better. But before I go any further, I think I'll take off that existing pipe there and fit up this one and just see where this brings us to. Never fails to amaze me what a can of worms you open every time you do just a simple job on a Slambretta. This old pipe was a pain to get off. Part of the issue is, if you can see in here, the flange here, the bolt is so close to the pipe, you can't get, a ring spanner on, even a small ring spanner, so you have to use an open-headed one. But just everything's in the way, so that the cowl was in the way, so you obviously have to take the spark plug out. Then you get things like these bits, always strip, on the engine block there, so someone has put a bolt in there with a lock washer, and you can't get spanner on that, so the carb had to come off. I just plonked that back on again. So yeah, to get the exhaust off, flywheel cover removed, cowl removed, carburetor removed, spark plug removed, but it did finally come off. So I got this other pipe just loosely in place, but the bad news is this pipe does also hit the ground as well, so I've got a feeling that might even hit the ground before that one did. But whereas this one, there was just no way really to cut and move that, it was just too big in general. This one, I think I could probably cut 25 mil out of that. I mean, that'll get me to the same problem as this one where the nut will be close to the bend, but I think it's doable. Offer this exhaust back in and just see how it's looking. And this is where things are getting interesting. So you can clearly see that this is hitting the ground, this box, and it's actually pushing the scooter over. It's lifting it off the ground. So that needs to come up quite a lot. But I do think we've got a lot of space in this area. I think this can tilt up, and I do need to cut that pipe as well from the barrel anyway to get that up off the ground. I'm going to cut along this bracket here so the thing can tilt with the panel on, and it's not quite at full slammed position because that's stopping it, but this tailpipe is actually up inside the panel there. Pulled this exhaust back off. Ideally I would cut the bracket here and here in two places, but from experience of welding the air tank up, I was forever chasing pinholes, and I don't really know what this metal is or how thin it is, and I could well just start blowing holes in this. So I think what I'm going to do is actually cut right across there, just take this bit off. This bracket is really chunky, so I'm pretty confident with my limited welding skills that I can get a big weld back on there. It'll be at a slightly different angle, and I can grind it all flat and make it look nice. Just want to avoid welding to this part of the exhaust as much as possible. This bracket is completely battered. Well, the studs have obviously worn away here. There's like a big lip there, and it's all buckled. So just going to straighten this out a bit. I'll give it a wire wheel off. I'm going to straighten out a bit of my vise, giving that a bit of a clean up. Throw that on there to start with, and let's just offer up the exhaust. I hope this comes out okay on camera. You can see what's going on. I mean, we are chasing millimeters here, but it fits in there nicely. I've got a gap there. I've got a gap between the engine. Looking down here, there's room in the frame. The only thing is it's kicking up slightly, and the issue with that is when I fit this footboard, it's just pushing up on the footboard. Now I could trim this footboard back, but I'm hoping I can adjust this a bit more because it's tilting up at this end, and I'd like it to follow the line of the frame if possible, obviously, so the footboard clears it. And what's stopping that is the tailpipe. Literally just got a 5mm spacer, so there's only 5mm there. But this tailpipe, because it kicks down, that is hitting the ground there. So I think what I'm going to do is either cut or bend this tailpipe just so I can get the silencer box just to sit down flush with this. Obviously this fixing bracket here as well is supposed to bolt up to there, so we're miles away, but if I can bend it out and get it roughly around here, I can just make a new bracket. Shouldn't be too much of an issue there. Just decided to do a pie cut, just by eye really, bent it slightly. That's definitely what I was after. So this exhaust now runs parallel to there, got the 5mm spacers. Yeah, this fits. There's at least a 5mm space in there as well. It is still pretty low, so I'm just wondering if I might just cut a bit more out there and just bend that up just to get that up off the ground a bit more. Okay, I've been tweaking this, pulled it on off a few times, adjusting that pie cut and pushing that tailpipe up. Pretty happy with where that is now. 5mm clearance there. It runs nice level parallel to my frame, and where that was dragging on the ground before, that kicks up nicely, and it's nearly the same level as it was before, but it's kind of parallel to the ground, kind of like that. So I think what I'm going to do is just clean up where I did this pie cut there, just throw a couple of tacks on. The bracket itself is not too far off either. I'm not sure whether I'm going to remake this bracket or just fill in that piece, but I might just tack it there just to keep the position while I sort out this U-bend which goes to the barrel, because that is going to be an issue. So I got a couple of good tacks on there and I was really tempted to fully weld that on. However, I'm so glad I didn't. Just check out what happens to this part of the exhaust when I lift the scooter up. See there, it hits there. It won't go up much further than that, to be honest, but I have got some room here to move this exhaust back. I just sort of trying to give myself clearance everywhere, but we can go back at least 20mm or so, which will probably line up the rear of that exhaust closer to where it was. So I'm going to cut those tacks off and move it back a bit. I've tacked this on for the second time and I've just raised the scooter up to ride height, and I'm still not quite happy with it. There seems to be enough ground clearance, I think, there, so you want a bit of play, and I just got a horrible feeling if you went over a bump and the scooter went up a bit, that is going to hit there. You can see there I've cut this bracket at an angle in the corner, and I think I can just get that back another 10mm or so. Got sort of 10mm or so clearance there. I'm going to cut these off again. Third time's the charm, I think, with this. Okay, this was the third time and hopefully I got it this time. So starting at the back, I actually got this located back in its original position. Now I did have to cut this tailpipe here. There was actually already a cut there. Someone had bent that, I'm not sure why, to avoid something. All this I'm going to have to reroute anyway, these tailpipes. But it was just hitting the panel thing on the frame. Coming to here, I threw a couple of tacks on the pie cut I did there because that was just kept moving. It was just really frustrating. We got clearance underneath now, probably a bit more than we had before. There's 8mm clearance at least there. I did have to trim this bracket back and I'll probably have to give it a little bit more clearance, and obviously I can trim this to suit here. Let's just see what happens now when I lift it up, see if it's going to touch. Oh wow, so that's perfect. Restraint strap there is at full stretch and that exhaust is not even touching. Got a couple of good tacks on there. I can weld this from both sides and tidy it all up eventually. And also check this out. I reckon there's like 2 to 3mm gap there all the way along, really consistent, which is nice because my footboard fits really well there. You can see it's probably like 1-2mm gap. So of course this pipe is nowhere near close to fitting now when I offer that up to the barrel, but if you remember the start of the video, it was hanging down too low anyway, so I need to shorten this. Now that pipe actually slots inside, so what I might try and do is grind the weld off here and just trim this back and see if I can just push it up into place. Got this part cut off and all cleaned up, and I've got the U-bend here, and just offering that up, it's not too far off, but it needs to go back that way a bit, and I need it to be a bit higher so it clears the ground. So I think I'm going to trim a little bit off this end, but also trim a little bit off this end, and then that help it push back into position. In position there. and there's loads of ground clearance. So really pleased about that. I remember before it was actually, that was the first thing that hit the ground. And if we go around this side, it's tight against the barrel, pretty much. So I just need to try and fit this thing on, put it all in place and just get a couple of tacks on there. That's the next job. So I think all they did with this end of it was just squashed it with a hammer or something. So I might just have to bash it a little bit to try and get that back on. It goes that way, I think. Tacked this while it was in position and I've got it all welded up. Bit of a nightmare. It was quite thin in places, started burning through a bit, but just kept stacking the weld and ground it all sort of smoothish. Once you've stuck a bit of paint on that and it's bolted up under there, never know. So that is ready to go on, I think now. Just put the panel back on just to see what I need to do with these tailpipes. And this panel, you can see, well, it's about 50mm up in the air because it is hanging up on the tailpipes. What I'll do is just chop them both off here just after this bracket and just see what is going to look right. They're in a bit of a state actually, a bit rusty, not the best of condition. My initial idea was just to weld them straight back on at an angle, but I think that's going to be such a severe angle, especially for that top one. If you can see that there, it's just going to look really odd. So I think what I'm going to do is try and extend them so they come out the back. I found an old microphone stand. If you don't know, I do play in a band. And this bit of pipe is quite a good fit. So this is the base of a microphone stand and the tailpipe fits in there quite well. So I think I'm going to weld a bit of this microphone stand onto there to extend these out to the back. But I want to give it a bit of a curve because that is just going to look odd as well. So I'll get my pipe bender out, put a couple of bends in these bits of pipe, just clean this one up at the end so I can tack it on. Do this one to start with and then try and make the other one follow it. A couple of issues, well, I need to avoid this, obviously the panel latches on this bit, so there needs to be some clearance here. And if I can get this panel on, I can sort of show you what I'm trying to achieve. I just want to bring it out somewhere around there. Just throw a tack on that first one, then I'll just try and get the other one to match up. Got these two pieces tacked on. I know it looks a bit of a mess, but I'm going to replace these end bits here. This bit that was already cut, I think I'm just going to chop this off it because it's going to be a shorter piece anyway. Offer the panel up, just keep trimming that, see what we can come up with. So there's actually hardly any of that black pipe left there. I also cut these off at an angle. Everything is tidying up. Obviously it does look a bit of a mess at the moment. I'm hoping once I've welded this and blended it and it's all one colour, it'll look a bit better. But with the panel on, you barely see anything. Yeah, so they're just going to poke out the panel there. Part of the reason it looks a bit awkward is because the two pipes obviously vertical there and I wanted them horizontal. I think if I'd stacked them on top of each other, it would have looked a bit weird. I'm going to pull off the exhaust now and get all that welded up and cleaned up. That cleanup took way longer than it should have, and I could have actually spent more time on it, but if you haven't noticed already, this exhaust is pretty battered anyway. So under there, you can see it's been scraped in the past, and the welds on the original exhaust before I even got my hands on it and cut it apart weren't brilliant. I'm going to leave it there. I mean, in hindsight, I think I would have cut these tailpipes off here probably, and yeah, made complete new ones. Did weld this bracket back on, got some super hot big welds on there. That feels rock solid now. On this U-pipe thing here, there's a massive dent again. Yeah, it's been scraped on the ground at some point. And I think to get that out, what I might do is just heat it up with my torch and just get a screwdriver and push that out a little bit. It doesn't need to be perfect, but yeah, it just looks a bit of an eyesore at the moment. So let's give that a go, and then I'm going to spritz some paint on it and offer it back on the scooter. Oops, this was supposed to be the big reveal. Look how clever I am. I've installed this exhaust. And what I forgot to do is to check these tailpipes at ride height. So they look great as they are now, slammed right down. They're not even the lowest things on the scooter, but of course, the way this engine pivots, actually it tilts that way a bit as the scooter goes up. So these tailpipes actually get slightly closer to the ground, and I was actually hoping they would rise up off the ground. So they're not going to work there. I just won't be able to lean the scooter over. So at the moment we've got like probably 40-50 mil, and as the scooter goes up to ride height, yeah, it just goes down by about 10 mil. We've only got like 20-30 mil there off the ground. I'm going to put the panel back on and then just see if I can trim them back a bit more, roughly at ride height. And let's just see how far I can lean this now before those touch. Not sure how well this comes out on camera, but that's quite a fair lean there. And those are just starting to touch there, but I think I am just going to trim these off just a little bit more, so give myself a bit more clearance. I just kept cutting and kept cutting just to make sure I had enough clearance. This now is at a crazy angle. There's no way that I'll ever lean it that far over, because that'll be the point where it just slips away, and still got clearance. So I'm pretty happy with that. This will discharge kind of under the panel, if you see what I mean. But that'll only be when it's slammed down. At ride height, you can see there's no issues at all. That's going to blow out exhaust. It's miles away from the panel. If we want to compare that to an original, look at Kermit. I mean, it's almost exactly the same scenario. So that's a completely standard scooter, completely standard exhaust, and it's doing exactly the same thing. The front is down. Just let the air out of the airbag. You can see in there, bottom of the exhaust tips pretty much level with the bottom of the panel. And as always, I'm overthinking it. I was worried about this thing filling full of exhaust fumes, etc. But I'll never have the engine running for long periods when it's fully slammed out. I'll get to where I need to get to, switch the engine off and air it down. And if I had thought about that from the start, I wouldn't have probably spent so long just extending those tips out here. And if we come around this side, I've just thrown the U-bend thing on there as well. I had some black paint, so I'll use that on this U-bend and paint the rest red. Tiniest bit of clearance there, that is at fully slammed height. And of course, because that's at the front of the engine, that actually lifts up as the scooter goes up, so there's no issue with clearance with that thing. Well, I've got a bit of air in the shop compressor. Let's have a bit of fun and just watch it go up and down a couple of times. So fully slam position there, and There you go, so you go down again. And that's about all I've got time for this week. I have been super busy outside on the building work there. And if you're familiar with the channel, you'll know all about that. That is the last big thing to be done before I tear the whole thing apart, fully weld up all this framework, probably go to Steve's and we'll put it on his jig just so we get this cradle welded in perfectly straight. Then it needs some paint and I can start the final assembly. Obviously quite a lot more to do on the front mudguard, etc. But I just want to start putting this thing together for the final time. So I do want to thank you all for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, please give us a thumbs up. Leave us a comment, that's really appreciated. I do try and reply to as many as I can. And you can find us on Facebook and Instagram. We have merchandise for sale, patches, t-shirts. There's two different types, the Slambretta one and the Cobbled Garage logo t-shirt. We ship those all around the world. And we'll see you on the next one. Cheers, bye.